today. Looking for a higher difficulty level for the new PC port of Vanquish? They've got you covered in bullets. This is CheckPoint. Welcome to CheckPoint, where we are back after taking last week off because I was out of town.
Yes, that is true. We did not do an episode last week. How could we possibly do an episode without you? Chat ixnay on the unit.
You know, I should actually read chat to see what people are saying.
No, we need to start the first story.
Okay. Remember when having Russians as your villains was such a quaint, outdated trope that actually doing it felt refreshingly different? You know, back in 2010? Well, the 2010 game Vanquish, where you fight space Russians, just got a PC port 7 years later, and it's being received very well with a couple exceptions. The most notable issue is that damage seems to be somehow tied to frame rate, in that players running the game at 60 frames per second take more damage more quickly than players running it at 30. This is a similar issue to the infamous Dark Souls 2 bug where weapon durability dropped far more quickly on higher frame rates. It's clearly a useful shorthand, tying certain game actions to frame rate, but maybe developers should stop doing it? Of course, internet discourse has taught me that if you're running a game at 60 frames per second, then you're in the gaming elite. And if you're so elite, maybe you should try not getting hit so much.
Overwatch has only been out for a year, and everyone's favorite dating sim/team shooter is very popular on Tumblr. Unsurprisingly, searching through the posts with Overwatch tags reveals that Tumblr is very interested in the idea of different members of Overwatch making kisses on one another, and the most popular pairing by a huge margin is McHanzo? Hanzo and McCree. So, if you remember our story on the Overwatch characters most searched for on Pornhub, you might be surprised by this news because Tracer was the overwhelming favorite there. So what's the deal? Well, the difference is that Pornhub's users are 75% male, but Tumblr skews more female, and that means Tumblr users are looking for a more sophisticated type of pornography. We won't just be content with a hastily drawn image set of someone ejaculating on Tracer's face. We want a canon-compliant, 130,000-word, 18-chapter-long AO3 fic filled with angst, one-sided pining that shifts to mutual pining and then briefly back to one-sided pining but the other way, supportive BFFs, and a rich, detailed narrative filled with authentic character voices. We're also way into boys kissing.
Tequila Works, developers of puzzle game Rime, have low-key issued a challenge to the cracking community. Crack their game, and they'll remove the anti-tamper DRM software. According to the developers' Steam forums, they debated internally using the de novo anti-tamper and DRM software, but ultimately decided to use it both to stop piracy and to, quote, ensure the best gaming experience. But then, by way of a weird reassurance, the post says that if it gets cracked, they'll just remove it and update existing copies. Nobody is really sure why the actual game experience would be hindered by piracy, and the devs haven't exactly explained that position, certainly not to the dozens of definitely civil and not at all rude and self-righteous comments on their Steam forums. Let's just say the Steam forum discussion makes both sides of this debate look bad. Our confusion is, once the game gets cracked, it's out there, so obviously there's no point in selling the DRM versions, so this isn't some kind of benevolent gift. All Tequila Works will lose by removing de novo is the lost cost of using it in the first place, and all they've gained is some press coverage that makes them look petty. And it will get cracked, because now people who don't even give a shit about Rime will crack it just to spite Tequila Works. The solution to this puzzle, Tequila Works, would have been to not say anything.
There's been another patch for Sims 4, and that means another CheckPoint edition of Sims 4 patch notes, aka, seriously, how did these things not get caught in testing? You have heard of testing, right? Anyhow, here's the highlights. Toddlers will no longer flirt with adults. Children will no longer receive inappropriate texts from adults. How did that get in there in the first place? Sims will no longer get a whim to get married if they're already married. Children can now smash a dollhouse that is currently in use by another child. A love guru from the romance festival that is married into a household will no longer remain immortal. Female Sims with a masculine build will no longer have 2 belly buttons. And probably most importantly, babies will no longer change skin tone when they are picked up.
The Final Fantasy VII Remake has hit a bit of a snag. Square Enix's Naoki Hamaguchi is taking the reins on the project and had this to say in a recent YouTube stream. Quote, so far, development has been carried out mainly with the support of external partners. However, in view of factors such as improving quality, The company has decided to shift the developmental system back within the company so as to maintain a stable schedule and have control over factors such as quality. We will be forming a robust system within the company to properly carry out the development. That sounds, well, it sounds like a polite corporate way of saying shit is fucked and now we have to unfuck it ourselves or it's just going to get way more fucked. There is no word on the release date for the Final Fantasy VII Remake, which was announced 2 years ago, so don't expect to see it before 2020 when it's released as an open-world motorcycle racing Instagram simulator.
It seems very bad.
It would if Square Enix was doing a remake of Final Fantasy VII, my favorite game of all time.
But they are, and they're changing everything and removing all the bits that made it great and charming and wonderful.
Exactly. So this isn't Final Fantasy VII. That game is finished and perfect, and Square can never take it away from me.
Then what game is Square even working on?
I don't know, and I don't really care.
Coming up, speedrunner CatCun24 has beaten Super Mario World in under 14 minutes while blindfolded. I can't even beat Super Mario World in that time with 2 working eyes, a spotter, and a turbo controller that plays the ghost houses for me.
Remember when having Russians as your villains was such a quaint...
The first one wasn't so bad.
You get 5 more tries.